Good evening and welcome back to our Christian Recorders Dialogue live from Orlando, Florida for the 51st quadrennial session of the African Methodist Episcopal Church General Conference. I'm back with you, Antoine Orlando Seawright, and from sunny Orlando, Florida. As always, I greet my bishop, Bishop Samuel Green in the 7th Episcopal District, and Supervisor Green, and certainly to my uncle in the 9th Episcopal District, Bishop Harry L. Seawright and Supervisor Seawright. And to cover my AME basis from the top to the parking lot, that covers all of the leadership of the church. I'm so grateful to be fifth generation AME. And so today, or this afternoon, earlier, we had the mayor of the county of Orlando, Mayor Demings, who is the husband of U.S. Senate candidate Val Demings, who we'll hear from tomorrow. But our next round of dialogues to include someone I consider not just a friend, but in her own way, a mentor, the presiding prelate from the 16th Episcopal District. She is the 135th elected and consecrated bishop of this church. Certainly she is no stranger to the AME brand or to the AME bond. An HBCU graduate, an incredible woman, an Alpha Kappa Alpha woman, and someone just earlier today took the reins officially as the president of the Council of Bishops. I'm so thankful and blessed to have Madam President Byfield with us for our dialogue. And as always, please, ma'am, please, sir, govern yourselves accordingly. Tell us where you're from. Tell us who your bishop may be and where you are, and tell us how happy you are to be a part of the Christian Record Dialogue. Madam President, welcome.
Thank you very much.
For those of you who may not understand, for those who are watching who may not understand what I learned growing up when they say ordinary women have been tapped or have been called to do extraordinary things, you exemplify that. Tell us a little bit about your journey, because you did not wake up one morning and decide to be an AME bishop.
Right. I was born in the AME family. My father was a pastor. My mother was missionary, YPD, or Sunday school musician, school teacher. My grandfather was a pastor in the AME church. So that was all I knew. All of the traditional things growing up, YPD, Sunday school, competitions with oratorical contests. And then when I was 21, I left the church. I never joined.
You're not 21 right now?
And so I went to the Nation of Islam. Never officially. But after about a year, I was pretty clear that I went out of grief. My father died, and I was struggling, and I was in love with Malcolm X. And so I wasn't all that in love with Elijah Muhammad, but I was in love with Malcolm X. And so I went there, and the long and short of the story is when the minister said to me, you have a potential of being one of the first women ministers in the nation, but you have never completely come into the faith. And I didn't join because of Muhammad. I joined because of Malcolm. And then I ended up going back to the AME church, and within 2 years after I went back, I accepted the call to preach. So it was a hard decision for me, but it was a good decision. And so all I knew, but I had so many brothers in the ministry that they made my journey. They did not make my journey hard. Other pastors made my journey hard because they thought that I felt privileged or that I came in with a superior attitude because of the lineage of my parents and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles. And as a result, I still kept it, but I was I was absolutely clear that I was not called to be a pastor. So I did Christian education, and other kinds of things. And then when the Lord called me to pastor, I said no. It took 3 years before I finally did. And once I did, I was clear that that was what I was supposed to be. So that pastors, First Church, traditional, sent me to a church with 9 members. The Lord blessed it, and within a year there were 75. And when I left the church, there were 200. The second church, they sent me, was 50. It was a celebration for me because it was a block and a half from my house. The other church was an hour and a half drive one day. And so people kept saying, well, you're going through a demotion, but when you've been traveling, I stayed there for 10 years, and that church grew phenomenally and became a catalyst for ministry and social justice in the community. And then the last church I pastored was in Detroit, Michigan. It was a glass ceiling appointment, signed to a church with over 900 members. They really didn't have that many. The congregation sat 2,500 people, huge sanctuary. From there, I stayed there for 5 years. God did amazing things, and then became a presiding elder for 9 years, and then became a bishop. I never, ever wanted to be a bishop. Never had it in my spirit to be.
But you knew you were called.
I was called to preach. When I was a teenager at a YPD convention in Pittsburgh, one of the YPD directors came to me and said, I hear you talking, you have a call to preach. And I said, no, I don't want to disrespect you because my parents told me I can't disrespect adults. I said, but no. And when I did it, was admitted to the annual conference on trial, somebody screamed, I knew it. This woman who had told me that when I was 15 years old belonged to that conference, and she remembered. So it became full circle. When I was at my first church, general officers and people would come to preach, and they would say, you have a call to be a bishop. And again, I would laugh. So
you were being called, you just didn't hear the phone.
Didn't hear it, wasn't trying to answer it.
It was on vibrate. It might have been off, sound like.
Right. And so finally in 2012, I decided to run. And then I had a Master's of Divinity, but it wasn't from an ATS school. And they ruled my candidacy ineligible. And I told God, I didn't want to run in the first place. So why would you let me go through this? And then when I came back 2 years later and ran, I was in a doctoral program when they rendered me ineligible from an ATS school, but I didn't have a degree from an ATS school. So I stayed in the doctoral program and decided that's just who I am. I went back and got a second master's while I was doing my doctorate. And so I ended up getting both around the same time. And then I ran again, and the Lord allowed me to win. So in other words, God is something else. He decided what he was going to do. You didn't listen. And then he had to confirm what he told you and other people he was going to do for you. I never thought that the church would elect a sister of a bishop. So my brother was a bishop. I never thought that the church would elect two people out of the same family. So I never believed. I know God told me to run, and there was something in my heart, but I really didn't. Well, you know what? That makes me cringe a little bit, because the God I know and the one that you have been serving for a long time can do the impossible and the unthinkable. God did. And so he did it. And so you are just living proof that when you count God out, he will come along and teach you that you don't know how to count. It was in my heart. Every time somebody would say you're not going to be elected, it was in my heart. God would say, you're going to be elected. So I would have to go get centered. I would have to go find a quiet place. And I would hear God. But somewhere I was like, a brother and a sister. And two things after I was elected that were phenomenal for me. One was this whole notion of a number. you're now 135.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay, I'm 135. And immediately people knew the number. So people asked me, what's your number? And the first day I was like, I'm 130. And they said, third. And they all knew. And one night I was reading the discipline for something. Oh, I knew. I was looking to see how many people were from the 16th district that had been elected. And as I was reading it, it dawned on me that I'm the 135th bishop elected after Bishop Allen. And that blew my mind.
Only God.
Only God.
Only God. Well, you've been elected.
Mm-hmm.
You've been consecrated. You've been serving. Today was a historic day in our church. You became the president of the Council of Bishops.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for you? And what does that say about how far we've come to allow a woman who did not think she was going to be a bishop to be in this role in a time period where environmentally we're finally celebrating the achievements of women instead of questioning or looking down on the progress and the abilities of women?
Well, first of all, I'm the fifth.
Sure.
Okay, I'm the fifth woman.
But it's still historic in its own way.
Well, this is historic. There are several historic. One, even though I'm the fifth, I'm the first. I think Bishop McKenzie was. I'm the second woman who was president of the Council of Bishops at the time of the General Conference. So that is very unusual.
That's historic.
Right. So it's just, I was scheduled to be president this year. I wouldn't have been president of the General Conference, if it had been for COVID. And so when they moved it, then in May. The second thing that I was thinking was very historic is you have a woman retiring and she's preaching. And you have the president of the council who was a woman. Sworn
in right after she finished preaching.
And
Delta and an AKA. And what can we say?
I'm right in front of her. And so she's right behind me. So it was like this gasp of nothing but men and then these two women. Because in our church, the protocol is the last people are the highest ranked people. So it didn't even dawn on me until we started walking. I was like, wow. The other historic is very personal to me.
Okay, testify.
My brother was elected a bishop in 1992 in Orlando, Florida. I was the second woman to lay hands on a bishop to consecrate them. Bishop Brian's wife, Reverend Dr. Cecilia, laid hands on her husband in 1988, and I was the first to lay hands on a brother. And my other brother did as well. In 2016, my brother laid hands on me. And I'm now in Orlando, where he was elected. It was a plethora of emotion for me. And it just like, wow.
And guess what else? You're sitting with Antoine Orlando Seawright.
So then the emotion of who my family was, I didn't come from a silver spoon.
Sure.
And what all of that meant, and what was in God's mind when all of this, and so it was just an interesting period for me. But yeah.
Well, let me tell you what it means. When God has a plan for your life, no matter what plan you try to overlay over his plan will always supersede your plan. It also says to me, when you were talking about you and Bishop McKenzie and you being a woman, is that this idea that when women lead, we all succeed.
When we lead, and that was her sermon, and that was my speech. But you asked me about this whole thing about the culturalization of women.
Because I think it's important.
It is. See, Black women have to take so much trash. Women have to take some trash black women
A double dose.
have a double dose. I call it a triple dose.
Okay.
I said we have.
Well, let's just say quadruple since we're
Right.
in a quadrennial
Right.
session.
No, and I say it's triple because we have to deal with the issue of racism.
Sure.
Then we have to deal with the issue of sexism.
Sure.
And then we have to deal with the issue of black female sexism, which is very different from sexism.
It's a whole nother layer.
It's a whole nother layer. So you have men who treat us badly, then you have black men who treat us badly, and then you have
Not all of them, because now you're trying to make me feel bad. Lord,
But-
for everybody watching at home, I'm not that guy.
So for me, so let's just talk about Cherry, the track, and the whole issue with the hair, with the swimmers. At the same week when Bill Cosby was released,
Mm-hmm.
and people all over social media said, "Oh, he's been vindicated." And I was like, "No, he hasn't been vindicated. He won on the technicality. He admitted that he was a rapist."
The same system that has locked away and locked up black people and black men
Right.
actually is the same system that had a bin that allowed him to go free.
Right. Now, in the same week, you saw all of these people trashing her for smoking marijuana
Mm-hmm.
when her mama died,
Mm-hmm.
which is a whole different,
Whole different animal.
a whole different animal. No grace. Now, some people have grace, but every time there is a black woman who emerges, it's the community. First is white racism, and then it's black misappropriation of who we are. So when you see me, or you see Vice President Kamala Harris,
Mhm.
or you see
Maxine
Regina
Waters,
Hall,
good Val Demings.
right, and you see Regina Hall, who's an actress, that it lifts up to women and girls that they can be. My grandgirls, I have two granddaughters, and I have to, when we had the quadrennial in 2019, and I preached, but when I walked in, with the bishop, they didn't know what a bishop was. They knew their grandma was a bishop. And my oldest grandson said, "Oh, that's what bishops do."
Mm. He could see a sermon.
He could see it.
He could see a sermon versus hearing a sermon.
You with all those men.
Mm-hmm.
The two granddaughters just sort of went, and they couldn't articulate,
Mm-hmm.
but they started telling everybody, now at home I'm grandmama, but when they came around here, that's grandmama the bishop.
Mm.
So it raises.
It gives them something to look forward to and something they can
Exactly.
touch and see.
And so seeing Vice President Kamala Harris,
Your sorority sister.
my sorority sister, and seeing all of these people in national leadership.
Michelle Obama.
So even head of the social workers or the
Mhm.
head of, it raises for girls, but particularly black girls,
Mhm.
that the lie that they have been told, that they will never be anything or amount to anything. And that's why is it Cherry? So that's why, Shakiri.
The track star.
Right, the track star. Somebody said, "I wish she didn't have orange hair." And I said, orange is a good color. Because you can't define who she is or what she is. So I think today, not even just today, when it was announced that I was the president of the council, social media, AME social media lit up.
Well, it's going to light up today because we're live all across the world.
But it lit up.
So you're trying to say you lit?
I was in shock.
I got you.
Right. I mean,
Well, he's a blow your mind kind of
he's
guy.
a blow my God. I mean, people were texting me from all over the world
Mhm.
who knew me.
Mhm.
Right. So and men and women, and a lot of it was political, but I heard women say to me, "We can see that we have an opportunity."
As I sit next to you, Bishop, I'm reminded of that quote I read somewhere between 3rd and 5th grade, is that little girls with dreams grow up to be women with vision. If I had to put a bow on you, that's what I would put inside the bow. But because we're running short on time, I need you to give me some Sunday school answers here for a second. Your priorities as Council of Bishop President going into, I believe, to be some of the most consequential times of my lifetime. If you had to lay out the top 3, one for the Father, one for the Son, one for the Holy Spirit, what would those 3 be?
The first thing is to help the church understand that we're shifting.
The tectonic plates of shifting.
Right. That COVID, we were already moving toward that, but COVID has exposed us to what we used to do and how we used to do it doesn't necessarily work. So that's number one. Second is helping the church to include those they choose not to include. That would be women.
Diversity and inclusion. That part we sometimes forget about.
What I said today in the speech is full equality. And then the third is a very different kind of thing, is providing an infrastructure of economic development, community development. You call it Sunday school answers, but educational. And I don't mean just HBCUs. I think we need to do college, but I think that Black Christians learn what they learn by, I won't call them racist, conservative white Christians. So they listen to them folks on TV and they read their books, and they don't really have an understanding of who they are as a Black person and a Black Christian.
Because we don't line up necessarily with the evangelical spirit that's been defined on cable news, particularly when it comes to our politics and our engagement.
That's right. We don't, and we don't even recognize.
I can't relate to Billy Graham's son.
I got saved at a Billy Graham rally when I was 14.
God bless you.
God bless me. It's right. They moved. Then I started working for the Billy Graham.
Double blessings to you.
Right. And I couldn't do that.
I can't relate to that. That's not the experience of this grandson of sharecroppers from South Carolina who grew up in AME Church.
But I'm saying I got saved in that ministry. So I thought, and I was like, no. I would go to white evangelical ministries when I was in my early 20s. And I would sit there, and all my girlfriends would just be, oh, isn't this the word? And I was like, where are the Black people? You know what I mean?
Now, Bishop, Madam President, now we got to run the tape back for a second. Because God done brought you a mighty long way. You was flirting with Muslims, flirting with the Muslims. You dated the Billy Graham following, and now here you are in the AME brand as the president of Council of Bishops. And I think certainly it's not how you started out; it's how you end up.
Well, but see, I ended up AME brand, but
you went through some stuff before that. Lord mercy.
Yeah, because tragedy, grief, loss. I was a child that had been raped multiple times as a young girl, and that brings a whole different level of who you are, or who you think you are, or who you're not. And then when my dad died, it left a void. So, yeah. But all of that makes me who I am. And so what it makes me is able to see the divinity in God's humanity.
That's strong. Say that again.
I can see the divinity in God's humanity. So it drives my husband crazy. We've been married 45 years.
That's longer than I've been alive, by the way.
So I'll go to a restaurant and the waitstaff comes and she'll look broken. I said, baby, what's wrong with you? I always been tired. You've been working all day. And I'll just start finding a way
to minister to
her. Sometimes I'll go for it. Do you have a relationship with Jesus Christ? Your uncle was with me one time when I did it, and he said, "You did that effortlessly," and I said, "It's because it's a gift that God gave me." But she needed to see that a perfect stranger could see her humanity and her divinity. So I'm able to see divinity and humanity. Secondly, I have this unconditional acceptance of people. That means that I love everybody. Well, I love everybody. I mean,
you don't like everybody. But you give everybody grace. You give them a runway of grace.
It doesn't mean that I necessarily want to run and hang out, but I do affirm. And the third thing, I think, that people who know me, they say that I'm an underdog person. So I see who other people would never see. And Bishop Bryan even said the other night in the Maximizing Ministry with Reverend Dr. Erica Crawford and Women in Ministry, that I would come to him and say, "Have you considered?" And he said in his head, no. And he didn't see it. But I would say, "Well, give him a try." And he said, 99% of the time, they were successful. But I saw it, but other people. So I think that makes me different, going through, the nation, going through Billy Graham. I think it just created in me visionary.
Well, look, that's what I said earlier. Little girl with dreams grew up to be a woman with vision.
Right.
Let's talk CHOP for a minute, because I know you got to run. We have 14 historical Black colleges and universities that fall up under this big umbrella called the AME Church. How important are those to the overall ecosystem we live in this country? And you can give me the Sunday school version. Okay. Because I don't want to get in trouble, get you late for your meeting.
Okay, well, I've already texted them. But the first thing is HBCUs still provide education for children who may not be able to go anywhere else. At the same time, providing education for children who are able to go everywhere else. And it merges that. Secondly, it creates African Americans a sense of destiny and confidence, because in most HBCUs, the faculty is predominantly Black.
The experience
is Black. The experience is Black, and you graduate with both knowledge and experientially, and a self-confidence. So I think it's critical. So that's why the AME Church has always been committed that one of the things that we needed to do was provide education. So it is still important for us, and that's why we're expanding. That's why Allen is expanding, and other schools are expanding. It is what we must do.
Got it. I'm gonna ask you one last question, and we're gonna let you go. And it's AMEs, when we say we're closing, that means there's 3 or 4 more closings coming. But this is really my last closing. When your tenure is over as the historic president of the Council of Bishops, what do you hope the AME Church across the world will be able to say about the 135th elected and consecrated bishop of this church?
That we connected the connection. I'm the bishop of the 16th district. I have 14 countries. I have 4 languages: Dutch, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and really Haitian Creole, which is 5. And often they're disconnected even from the English speaking. And then they're disconnected from the United States. And Africa is disconnected from the United States, and we don't connect the connection. The second thing I think I hope to do is one of those things that I said, that I will see concrete. So the issue of maybe solidifying education. And I am very much committed to creative justice in the ecology and the environment, that we can put some teeth on that.
Little girls with dreams grew up to be women with vision. That is the 135th elected, consecrated bishop of the church, who today was sworn in and confirmed as the president of the Council of Bishops. I'm so thankful for your time,
Thank
Bishop.
you so much.
I'm so thankful to call you a friend and a mentor, and we hope to have you back
I'd
soon
love to.
with the Christian Recorder. Thank you all. We will be speaking to Bishop Jackson from the 6th Episcopal District a little later on. We'll see you soon.